Hey there. Before you sink into dreams tonight, imagine this. The chamber around you quivers with secrets, bathed in firelight that flickers against old stone, every shadow bending closer as if listening. The air is heavy, the kind of heavy that clings, scented with sharp iron and the hush of crushed herbs. Soothing yet strange. Somewhere, far beyond these ancient walls, the restless sea sighs. Its voice threads through sleeping Colchis, as if the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for a tale to awaken. This is where our journey into Medea's legend begins, a space suspended between dread and comfort, where myth sharpens the edges of every whisper and heartbeat. Tonight, you do not just hear the story, you breathe it in, tasting the promise of revelations yet to come. There's a haunting twist nestled deep in Medea's fate, something you won't see coming, and by the time the last embers die away, you'll understand why her name still trembles on the lips of storytellers. If you find yourself drifting here because you love stories that feel like quiet storms, where ancient myth settles across your bed like mist, then when the story's done, and only if it truly soothes or stirs you, feel free to let me know by liking or subscribing. Right now, though, I'd love for you to join the circle under these hush-lit shadows. Let the hush settle as Medea's world comes alive for you. Wherever you are, you're part of a gathering that stretches across time zones, settling in together under the calm weight of night. Go ahead, pull your blanket close, turn every nearby light to its faintest glow, and let your body sink into comfort. Feel for the pulse of the story beneath your skin, and prepare for a journey that wanders deep into the mythic age, haunting and quiet, fierce and beautiful. You find yourself in a dimly lit chamber where the air holds the tang of iron and herbs. The shadows are deep, thrown long by flickering firelight, and the distant sound of the sea breathes through cracks in the ancient stone. Here, in the heart of mythic Colchis, history seems to coil and pulse, a place suspended, untouched by time. If you pause, you might hear soft chanting drifting from hidden halls, echoing laments twined with fate and memory. Tonight, you step not merely into the story of Medea, but into her gaze, wary, vivid, and unspeakably old. Under the watch of ancient gods, her legend stirs, a tale pulsing beneath Greece and beyond, waiting to claim its due. The hush of the room is broken only by the flick of flame and the slow, steady heartbeat of night. You let your senses open, the warmth of the fire against your cheek, the cool lash of salt air creeping along the floor, the herb's sweet tang rising from the folds of your robe. In this threshold of time, where no locked doors stand, and the golden age still lingers in memory, safety feels different. Once, so the story claims, no one feared strangers. In those gentle first days of the world, trust was a currency richer than gold, a time before betrayal became a shadow that clings. But there, behind every surface, the mythic age simmers, a world before the names of gods or mortals settled into the dust. Once, there was only the soft breath of chaos, not confusion, but a vast, yawning void where everything and nothing began, the origin less of disorder than of possibility itself. Pure ether swirled above, a rarefied air so clear it could only be breathed by gods, its very presence tingling against mortal skin, too fine, too sharp for those who walked the ground. Deep beneath that upper air, Gaia unfurled, ancient earth herself, her body moss, sweet and rooted, her patience as slow as stone. The chamber seems to grow colder as these older presences gather, their stories bleeding through the walls. Your fingertips brush rough stone, and it sends a shiver up your arm, a reminder that every myth has its own pulse, sometimes slow and sometimes dangerous. In the distance, soft chanting rises and falls, the language too old for the tongue, almost felt instead of heard. It is lament, memory, and warning all at once. Here, fate is not a thing seen, but a veil woven tight, shimmering in the low light. In gentle rhythm, the fire pops. You close your eyes, just for a moment, listening with your heart. Through Medea's gaze, you sense the world differently. Every sound carries a secret. Every scent holds the memory of something lost or never grasped at all. Her childhood, you realize, was shadowed by gods watching too closely, kin haunted by prophecies, and mothers who hummed to sleep with tales of both terror and hope. Not far from this chamber, the halls of Colchis stretch outward, stone arteries deep in the palace, where the air sharpens and echoes as if the building itself has learned to breathe. Down those corridors, you glimpse fragments of a life both privileged and isolated. A young Medea practicing spells under the watchful eye of nymphs, learning the names of bitter roots and nighttime flowers, feeling the power in her blood growing restless. Beyond the walls, the world teems. There are markets tight with the scent of olives and fresh wool, sailors bearing tidings from distant shores, and the ever-watchful sky, where thunder sometimes grumbles abroad, reminding all who live beneath it that the gods keep their own counsel. Colchis is a land perched on the edge of the known world, at the very mouth of the Black Sea, a borderland where old magics linger and new ambitions arrive with every foreign tide. Within these chambered halls, you sense more than just mortal lineage, something ancient, almost wild, coiling within Medea. Her father, Aeetes, rules the kingdom with a grip as patient and cruel as winter, and her family is haunted by the weight of divine grudges. Down through the generations, the earth itself seemed to rebel, as Gaia, aggrieved by the suffering of her children, held captive beneath the ground, once crafted her own vengeful answer, plotting and planting, making even the gods wary of familial wrath. The flickering light dances over jars of brewed poisons and bundles of dried herbs. The tang sharpens, then sweetens, as an unseen draught stirs the leaves. Here, Medea learned patience, but also caution, a lesson that love and fear are sisters that rarely walk alone. You can almost hear her heart beneath your own, measured and slow, waiting for the spark that will one day set everything ablaze. Just as you start to relax, a presence seems to bloom in the corner, a shifting, curious energy, not quite friend and not quite foe. There is always someone or something listening in myth, even when the room feels empty. And so the story waits, tense and unfinished, hovering just above the world you know. Tonight, as you wait in the twilight of fires and old stone, every breath might be borrowed from another age. Medea's story is only beginning to uncoil beneath your skin. Soon, you'll see what it means to look through her haunted eyes, where love is sharp, loss lingers like perfume, and every promise carries the weight of doom. For now, Let the last flame gutter low as the sea's murmur threads deeper into the walls. And listen, the myth is close, whispering, urging you to stay. The hush in the stone-walled chamber is broken only by the crackle of a fire, stuttering through thick logs, painting restless shapes along the uneven floor. You linger in the strange half-light of Colchis, a land pressed between wild mountains and the murmur of the endless Black Sea. The air here tastes both metallic and green, a mingling of the tang of iron-rich earth and the bruised perfume of herbs hanging from the rafters, their leaves curling in the smoky glow. Underfoot, the marble is cool and slick, hinting at midnight baths and secrets old as myth. Tonight, breath catches on the scented haze, as if the walls themselves withhold a breath, waiting for what will come next. You feel it vibrating within these halls, Medea, neither merely a child nor simply the daughter of Yetis, king of Colchis. They say the blood of the sun god Helios stains her line, and something of that radiance pulses beneath her skin. She is raised by the rituals of fire, by the moon's sly cycles. Kneeling beside her nursemaid, she crushes bitter leaves and measured powders, her small hands already stained by the alchemy of intention. You sense her learning to distinguish the faintest change in wind, to hear the threads of old magic running beneath a lullaby or whispered warning. The world outside will call her princess, but within there is a current too deep for titles, an inheritance darker and older than the torch-lit palace itself. In these early years, you watch as Medea's gaze flickers over the boundary between kin and stranger, between medicine and sorcery. Her grandmother's voice slides between the shadows, teaching her about the stealth of roots and the truth of stories. On certain forbidden nights, she steals from her bed, creeps barefoot onto cold flagstones, drawn to the hearth where she listens to the soft lament of elders, remembering the time before the world cracked into order. Their tales unfold in the glow of a golden age, when people did not bother with locks or boundaries, trusting in the kindness and stillness of those days. Yet, as you lean closer, the comfort of the fire is never full. There is something uneasy threaded through even this privilege. Her father's rule bristles with hidden dangers, the constant need to defend a kingdom blessed and cursed by its magic. You can almost smell the acrid tension in the hallways, coiled like a storm waiting for release, as servants move quietly to avoid notice. Rumors whisper through the marble that Medea's blood will bring awe and ruin, that nothing woven in this family comes without painful unraveling. You catch the shape of her mother, a presence soft as moonlight but distant, her affection passed out in rare glances, her hands forever chilly from hours under the stars. Her father, tall and brooding, presides over banquets with eyes forever darting past his daughter, seeking threats more than kinship. Medea, surrounded but never embraced, finds solace instead among her herbs, each a whisper of a world beyond grasp and a promise, to heal or to harm, as fate requires. Outside the window slats, a distant roll of thunder brushes the horizon, and the scent of rain rides in on the sea wind. In time, children's games are shed for more serious study, moon phases traced in salt, animal hearts split and pressed between palms, runes inked onto smooth pebbles, left as offerings at forgotten crossroads. She learns that the earth itself is restless, always shifting just beneath the crust of the real, and there are ways to coax its secrets. But not all lessons are gentle. One evening, hidden from sight by the faded curtain, Medea watches as her uncle groans through a fever none can break. Her grandmother's chant rises and falls, then fades away, overtaken by the hush of those resigned to mortal limits. Even here, Medea alone remains by the cot, eyes wide as spring, pressing an herb poultice to his brow, feeling her own heart pounding in painful sympathy, until she sees him breathe easier, lungs deepening, and she knows she has reached across some unseen line. Relief coils with dread. Power is always paid for, whether in fear or gratitude. That night she cannot sleep. Shadows fret across her ceiling, and the laments of the dying echo in the spaces between dreams. It is then she first wonders if kindness or cruelty will define her gifts. You sense her wrestling with this each dawn, as she listens to the priests pray for the favor of distant gods, her own faith tangled more in root and rain, and the memory of soot beneath her nails. Now, years pass, quiet as a slow tide. The firelight in her father's hall has grown to feel like both safety and cage. Each festival, Medea sits apart, fingering her pulse in time with the drums, watching the dancers sweep across marble, their laughter both inviting and exiled. She knows that soon her own fate will be demanded, likely bartered for alliance or peace. The threat hums beneath conversations. The lives of princesses are rarely left to themselves. And yet, when night stretches long and the sea moans against the cliffs, Medea slips to the garden's edge, softly trailing her hands along dewy leaves, humming the half-remembered lines of her grandmother's spell. You see how easily she bends lost animals to her will, how stray cats and crows find their way to her sill, knowing food and sanctuary wait. Even as rites grow stranger, as each year she is drawn deeper into mysteries her peers cannot fathom, Medea's spirit remains restless. It is this same unrest, you might suppose, that sharpens her senses to every shifting shadow in the chamber. She grows wary of her father's wary gaze, of courtiers' respectful tones that barely mask a barbed oar. Then, unexpectedly, a pale morning brings a visitor from far off, the envoy from Colchis, carrying tidings of unrest and a hunger for what Colchis guards. You sense the routine's twist, the fabric of her world tightening with old anxieties. Beneath the gilded words, a storm begins to gather, too distant for the others to feel, but not for Medea. By the next day, there are new prayers, more incense, the air thick enough that every inhale catches at the back of your throat. A slow pivot, almost invisible, childhood closing like a door behind her. Still, in the flicker of the hearth, Medea's eyes remain sharp, unwavering, and for a moment, guarded by flame and shadow, she feels herself more than the sum of her roles. The world outside beats at the windows, restless and cold. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, a ship is already tracing lines across the dark water, its prow aimed at Colchis. Its captain's heart burns with the promise of glory, though he cannot know he sails toward myth, toward the girl who waits by the fire with her own story to write. Something ancient stirs in the wind, more than fate, more than vengeance, foretelling a collision that will leave neither heart nor history unchanged. Through the haze of incense and storm you glimpse a new figure, Jason of Iolcus, eyes bright with hunger for legend. A hush wider than the cold marble floor stretches around you. The air is both thick and fragile, hushed, as if awaiting some impossible arrival. Rain leans against the stones beyond, distant thunder rolling across the edge of Colchis, like a promise grown tired of waiting. You draw nearer in spirit, curling around the figure that has just stepped from legend into this still, flickering chamber, Jason of Iolcus, heir to a shattered throne, breath sharp with longing, eyes restless as the sea he has just traversed. He stands in the unfamiliar half-light, helmet braced beneath his arm, watching the gold-bladed fire dance along the walls. His companions, a band of exiles and would-be heroes, Argonauts, murmur warily amongst themselves. Their language feels sharp-edged and clipped against the fluid tongue of Colchis, every phrase trembling with the risk of failure. They have sailed through the thickest reaches of the mythic world to reach this place, drawn by stories of a fleece spun from the dawn itself, hanging in a sacred grove as if the gods had hung their dreams to dry. For you, and for Medea who stands wreathed in the smoke, this first moment sharpens everything. Jason is not beautiful in the usual sense, and there is a stiffness about him, as though he is still at sea. Yet in his gaze is the purity of hunger, the rare kind that aches not only for victory, but for meaning, for redemption. You trace the lines of tension in his hands, his careful courtesy to Aietes, Medea's father, who greets the strangers as both host and sovereign. The king's voice is weary and wary, every word gilded with suspicion, every gesture echoing inward, as if he can sense the myth that is about to break loose from his household. Incense coils through the air, draping the shoulders of everyone in the room. Somewhere in the corridor beyond, the quiet chants of temple servants rise and fall, invocations to foreign gods, prayers for peace, or perhaps for delay. Every now and then, a sharper scent intrudes on the sweetness, the copper tang of old iron from a weapon in its sheath, or the pungency of some herb Medea has crushed restlessly between her fingertips. It is these details, you find, that root you in the moment, anchoring the ghost light of destiny to the crunch of gravel beneath a stranger's heel. Here is the paradox at the heart of all myth. The most fateful meetings unfold slowly, like dawn. The Argonauts are given wine and honey, bread and olives, and in the lamplight their foreignness softens, shoulders unfurling in gratitude. Jason, though, eats little. His eyes keep straying to the darkness beyond the threshold, to the shadowed colonnades where legend suggests monsters and miracles might walk at will. It is there, just outside the safety of the king's feast, that you sense the silent axis of the night turn. Medea observes him through the uncertain hush, her mind a forest of doubt and strange certainties. She cannot help but recognize something mirrored in him, a familiar sense of exile. For he, too, has been driven from his home, tasked with an impossible quest, each success marked only by fresh risk and deeper loss. The two of them breathe the pure upper air of myth together now, caught between gods and the slow violence of fate. Lightning flickers beyond the carved lintel, and with it comes a subtle shift. Through the haze you notice the smallest, most telling gestures. A glance across the emptied platters, a fingertip drawn along a bowl's rim, a silent offer of understanding that passes like a note folded beneath a door. Even before a word is spoken, Medea has begun to hope for something she cannot name, as if loneliness itself might be a beacon, drawing her toward the unknown. Jason's voice, when it comes, is careful, even humble. He requests the golden fleece as a supplicant, not a conqueror. His plea is salted with tales of his own hardships, of longing for peace after years of exile lurking at the edge of Greek lands. Aeetes, of course, will not give up the fleece so easily. He is a king, but more importantly, a father, wary of any golden-mouthed promise from the lips of a stranger. The room thickens, growing almost ominous as he names the conditions for Jason's quest: harness the fire-breathing bulls of Colchis, plough the sacred field, sprinkle it with dragon's teeth, and face what rises from the black soil. In that list, you hear an old king's terror of being bested at his own game, a protection not merely of a prize, but of a future. There is a hush, a gathering of breath at these stipulations, yet the most haunting quiet comes from Medea herself. Her gaze no longer slides past Jason. Instead, it lingers, heavy, unsure, charged with a pang that neither hope nor dread entirely captures. As the strangers drift away to their cold beds, she remains among the dying candles, fingertips stained green from herbs, heart twisting with the unanswered question: will she risk everything for a foreigner whose hunger so nearly matches her own? On the far side of the palace, the ocean mutters softly against rough stone, as if repeating its own ancient warnings. At the edge of sleep, you hover on Medea's sorrowful threshold, a place neither entirely of Colchis nor yet of Greece, straining to read the omens scribed by thunder in the hollow night. Rain thickens, the fire gutters, and you sense the choices brewing in her mind, each possibility ghosting through the room like a half-spoken spell. It is here, in this precise hush, that a delicate twist of fate begins to unwind. Medea is a daughter of enchantments, her lineage steeped in powers both healing and dangerous. She knows potions that bind and roots that release, the ways of shadow and the faces of old pain. Her isolation was once a shield, but now, beneath the pressure of her father's threat and the foreigner's need, she feels her own desires awaken, strange, inescapable, impossible to bargain away. A subtle, bitter laughter leaks from the walls. Fate has set her at the crux of someone else's legend. Yet, as thunder rumbles and the scent of burnt sage trails after her, Medea makes a silent vow. If Jason asks for help, and if her heart compels her toward him, she will bend her art to his cause, not for the fleece, not for the gods, but for that quiet understanding she glimpsed across the dim-lit hall, a promise of not being alone. Desire breathes quietly, shadow to shadow, as the myth readies itself to break toward its first irreversible night. Listen. In the hush before dawn, the world feels suspended, caught between the dark hush of Colchis and the pale promise of ancient Greece. The embers in Medea's chamber gutter, casting wild shadows along bare stone, and each movement in the heavy air is steeped with portent. There is the tang of iron, roots and herbs mingling as you inhale, sharp and green, twisting with the mineral scent of earth and salt carried by the breath of the far-off Black Sea. Your bare feet graze cold marble. It grounds you, stirs a secret thrill beneath dread. Through a half-shuttered window, gold and blue flicker against the horizon. But still, the moon's pale gaze holds sway. Somewhere, the slow lament of a night chorus haunts the vaults above, a harmony of distant women's voices and the sigh of wind. You sense that something is coming. Desire, thick and dangerous, coils silently as a serpent. It breathes where the torches flicker, unseen yet always present. Medea stands in the threshold where her fate waits, her hands trembling over bowls of bitter potion. You can almost see her reflection, ghostly, divided, caught between prophecy's demand and the low, quiet pulse of her own need. It does not feel like a love story. Each glance exchanged with Jason is a negotiation of danger, an unspoken agreement that ruin is as likely as hope. Shadows press close around her. In that hush, every heartbeat weighs with choice. Jason, too, is a haunted figure, half illuminated by the unsteady pulsing of the flames. His footsteps echo in the corridor, hesitant and foreign, edged with the uncertainty of a man who knows. He courts forces beyond his understanding. Kings and heroes cross the earth, it is said, but few set foot in these silent antechambers where gods whisper in the dark. The silence between Medea and Jason is stretched tight, words unsaid, bargains still forming, the hush between two storms. From the corridors, the faint perfume of sacred oils drifts, mingling oddly with the harsh smell of blood on cold metal. Jason speaks her name, softly, as if afraid the walls might overhear, as if hoping his voice alone can weave warmth into stone. But Medea's eyes, so clear and fathomless, betray nothing but a warning flicker. She steps closer, somewhere between invitation and threat. Does love begin as a spark, or with a shiver of dread? In these halls, the answer is forever tangled. A figure passes, wrapped in priestly vestments, murmuring fragments of prophecy, warnings that mortals who meddle with cosmic law inevitably pay a price. The words linger like a chill in the room. Medea knows too well that ancient cycles govern every promise, every curse. From the first meeting of night and darkness, even light's birth was not innocent, but shadowed by the threat of returning voids. The myths remember. Nothing is freely given. A sudden flash of lightning, silent but bright, leaps beyond the pillars. The scent of storm fills the air, sharp and electric. You feel it. Every hair on your arm standing, every sense amplified as if the gods themselves have turned their gaze to this little chamber. Medea's hands move, measured, precise, as she pours thick liquids and powdery resins. They catch fire beneath her breath, the little flames hungry for any stray word or promise. The old warnings stir again. Her tongue forms syllables as old as the land itself. Just then, Jason falters, reaching for her as if to cross a barrier not of stone, but story. He brings the weight of distant Iolcus and the desperate hope of exiles who have already seen too much. His voice, barely above the wind, asks for help, a plea masked as a bargain, his fate placed openly before her. For a moment, the hush nearly overwhelms you. Medea looks beyond him, into the chamber's uncertain dark. She can already see what is to come, fields sown not with wheat, but with teeth and fire, kings rising only to fall, and herself always suspended between sanctuary and exile. Still, her heart catches. There is something in Jason that stirs the old gods, and something in her that cannot let that promise pass untaken. Soft thunder slows above the coast, long and drawn apart, as if the sky itself is reluctant to let the days unravel. The burn of herbs and resin fills your senses. The fire dances, casting shifting shapes along the walls. The world outside these walls is growing distant, all its brightness collapsing into the slow, deliberate spiral of desire and foreboding present here. Consider now the quiet tension at the room's edge, a moment suspended between breathing in and breathing out. What would you trust in the dark if both prophecy and longing pressed against your will? Medea's answer glimmers within her grasp before she lets it fade. The bargain, when it finally comes, is nearly silent. Sharing her secrets, her art, means letting Jason cross that fragile threshold where doom and devotion twist together. She gives him a vial, smooth as a river stone, and filled with something no hero should ever hold. The storm outside hovers, curiously attentive, as though the heavens await her next move. Jason's thanks are low, fervent, almost boyish, a flicker of hope in a tale that promises none. Even now, the omens deepen. Overhead, torches sizzle, as rain spatters stone just beyond the windowsill, each drop stamping the darkness with its own fleeting promise. It is strange, you think, how stories in this age of myth seem always entangled with doom. Desire is quicksilver, sliding from hope to hunger, coiling behind every shadow. You sense Medea's mind wandering to distant lands, imagining herself at the prow of a foreign ship, fugitive and bold, or perhaps standing alone on ruined shores, her voice trailing laments like silken banners behind the wind. But here, in this chamber cut from Colchian rock, both are bound by the same bonds. The air is thick with tension and secrets, every gesture weighted beneath centuries of whispered warning. Will you remember this quiet caesura, a pause before dawn, desire wound tight as a bowstring? Listen longer, and you'll hear the sea calling, patient and unyielding beyond the walls. The bargain is made, the spell laid, though the true cost has not yet come due. And as the fire flickers lower, casting Medea's shadow long and thin against a marble, you glimpse the turning point waiting at the edge of the storm. The first test approaches, hungry for blood and legend. In the cold dawn, the fields themselves will bear witness, a proving ground shaped by gods, by memory, by the unstoppable unraveling of all that desire dares to touch. The chamber is half shadow, half answer, and you are standing there with Medea. Restless embers burn low in their copper braziers, hissing softly, painting the stone with bands of bottle green and ochre. Dawn is only a rumor. The sky is the color of old bruises beyond the carved windows. In this hush, the world feels both endless and sealed off, thick with the taste of iron, sharp herbs, and something older still, something like fear, like distant thunder rolling in from the edges of Colchis. You are inside the moment the impossible begins. The king's voice is heavy with sleep and triumph when he tells Jason what is expected. Yoke the fire-breathing bulls forged by Hephaestus himself. plough the dark fields with their shuddering power, then sow the soil with the teeth of fallen dragons. Each tooth will rise, transformed, as a warrior hungering for blood. The chamber echoes with the king's words, and outside, the sea's breathing grows, if not louder, then more ragged. You sense the unspoken. These trials are not merely tasks, but a covenant with dread. And the air feels chilled by it. Medea steps from behind a pillar, draped in midnight blue. Her movements are slow, deliberate, the hush before a hunting owl swoops. She brings Jason a small bundle, wrapped in linen, glinting faintly in the dim. Inside are iron roots pulled from the wildest woods, and a salve she has made herself, sharp with the scent of wormwood and honey, humming with promise and threat. You watch her reach up and touch Jason's face, her voice only a thread. "Smear this on your skin," she whispers. "Do not let it slip your mind, or this chamber will become your tomb." Her fingers linger, marking him with the smallest sigil, soft as a feather dropped in water. All the while, her eyes stay fixed on him, not with adoration, but with something hungrier and more haunted. Her glance lingers, just long enough to make you uneasy. Outside, wind spills through the courtyard, cold against burning torches. Jason steps into the frost of morning, the world vast and staring. The bulls erupt from their pen in a scream of brass and steam, hooves hammering, eyes bright with smoke and rage. The earth shakes. You see Jason hesitate for only a moment, and then Medea's charm cloaks his skin, muffling the bite of the bull's breath, until it slides uselessly across him, unable to raise a blister or scar. Each snort from the beasts sounds like a memory of war, and you register the thread of myth tightening. Every act here ripples outward, echoing into legend. Steel on hoof, Jason fights the yoke's weight as he grabs the horns. In this moment, his face is ultramarine, blurred by sweat and terror. With Medea's whispered magic pulsing beneath his veins, the bulls at last relent, snorting sparks as though resigned to the will of the gods. The onlookers, silent courtiers, veiled priestesses, the king arching forward in his seat, clutch each other's hands, struck dumb by the nearness of death, curling away harmless, slinking into dawn light. Medea's gaze never leaves him. You are there with her, folded into her suspense, feeling the way her breathing falters as Jason tames the impossible, step by step. Love, here, is not gentle. It trembles like a knife laid against the skin, savoring, measured, almost reverent. Ploughing comes next. Jason drags the bronze-cutting blade through ancient soil, turning up clumps thick with black roots. The plough squeals, and the land resists, as though it remembers what it once drank, ancestral blood, spilled in the earliest wars when chaos was not confusion, but a chasm waiting to swallow hope. The world holds its breath. Medea stands at the edge of the field, her cloak lifted by the wind, chanting low in a tongue that twists and blooms in the mind. Too old for memory, older even than the tale itself. The tang of freshly cut earth mixes with the sting of distant rain, as if the sky pities what unfolds here. When Jason scatters the dragon teeth, each falls like a promise. Then the ground shivers. You hear it, the scraping of stone and bone beneath your feet. Warriors grow up from the dirt, eyes dull, skins smeared with clay, weapons already in hand, a dream of violence given body. For a moment, it seems not even Medea can protect against what she has helped create. There are too many, and they are too hungry. She moves closer, watching Jason's panic rise, her own heart thumping in time with the stamping feet of the earthborn army. In that knife's slender pause, she murmurs to him, "Throw a stone into their midst." Her words curl like smoke, secret, heavy with intent. Jason does as she bids. The thrown rock cracks through the air, lands among the warriors, and then a sudden confusion shudders through the newborn ranks. They turn, lashing out at one another, blades flashing pale in the half-light. You hear guttural shouts, the clangor of bronze, the wet whisper of a wound. Within heartbeats the field is silent, but for the crackle of dying fire and the susurration of rain beginning to fall. Jason kneels in the mud, immortal for a blink, drawing each breath as if it were his first. There is calm after the killing, but it is not peace. Listen, there, a faint keening carries in from the shoreline, laments from women who know what all this will cost. Medea stands at Jason's shoulder. Their hands are close, nearly touching, both slick with sweat and magic. In that hush, you might believe that the tests are finished, that love and cunning have lifted them above ruin's reach. But even as the king's footsteps echo toward them, you sense that the air is tense, with an unfinished promise. Something flickering in Medea's gaze more fiercely than any torchlight. You are reminded that in the mythic age, saving a life can fracture it forever. Medea's eyes shine with what appears to be devotion. But if you look closer, you might see something colder beneath, her calculations sliding beneath the surface. She has not simply aided Jason, she has transformed him. Together, they have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. In the flickering half-light, as thunder rolls faintly over the Black Sea, the king's laughter rings brittle. He announces Jason's triumph, but you can taste the bitterness in his mouth. The golden fleece is almost theirs. But already the room stirs with unrest, suspicion, and the sharp scent of betrayal just beneath the sweet aroma of hope. With each test, the cost of keeping love and power close has grown, threatening to devour them from within. All around, the myth thickens. You see restless movement near the doorway, a priestess draping shadow over her shoulder, a dog shivering beside a pillar, ears pricked at something only it can hear. It is as though everyone senses what Medea knows. The tests have been passed, but the true ordeal is only beginning. Darkness gathers at the edges of the firelight, waiting. Night presses in, relentless. You watch Medea at the prow, the ship rocking beneath her steady stance. Salt-laden gusts whip stray locks of her dark hair across her cheek, and somewhere above the spar, a lantern swings, its meager firelight coughing shadows across her eyes. The sea is black and fathomless, devouring the whispers of men below deck and offering nothing back but the briny tang that stings the throat. Beside her, Jason stands, shoulders tense. He scans the horizon for dangers seen and unseen. But his gaze cannot pierce the ancient night or the hurt that simmers against Medea's breast. Lean closer to the edge with her. Beneath her hands, the wood is slick with a mixture of sea spray and sweat, proof that even mythic journeys are bound to mortal fears. Down the length of the Argo, the rower's chant is a low drone, old as tide and older, a spell spun not from words, but the weariness of flight. Every oar-driven surge presses deeper into exile, splintering the innocence of a homeland that is hers no longer. You feel the air tethered tight between now and before. A thread snapped, a memory left twisting in the wind. Behind, Colchis dissolves into a blur of unreachable land and ruined loyalties. The kingdom she has betrayed still grieves in the distance, its knight wounded by the echo of her father's shouts and the sharp metal of pursuit. Far astern, torches flicker faintly along the shore. Her father's guards, silver-armored ghosts patrolling the border between vengeance and heartbreak. Every foot of water gained is carved with cost. The Argonauts keep to their benches, careful not to disturb the difficult peace between hero and sorceress. Occasionally, a glint of bronze catches in the lantern's throw, a wound, a token, or perhaps the fleeting hope that lies ahead in Iolcus. The scent of iron mingles with that of singed herbs, carried in secret pouches at Medea's belt, each charm like a puzzle box of regret and intent. In the stern, Orpheus plucks his lyre, a thin, trembling melody threading through the gale, trying to lull fear or guilt, or even the gods themselves to sleep. The music is gentle, but in its lilt you taste the ache of goodbyes that can never be said aloud. Sometimes the hush breaks for a heartbeat, an anxious glance between two men, or an unasked question hanging in the heavy salt air. Has Medea's magic gone too far? Could a heart so keen be recast in the forge of new beginnings? Or is she only sharpening her longing into something unbreakable? You see her silhouette, rigid and small against the night's endless hunger. She does not weep, not for the burning bridges or for the cradle roots she has scorched behind her. Instead, she tastes the moment, every heartbeat laced with the bitter promise of sacrifice. The prow thrusts forward, knifing through foam and the soft laments that the sea keeps for mothers, for daughters, and for those who find themselves caught between. Far off, lightning blinks on the rim of the world, distant thunder folding into the dark, answering the low chants with a language only old souls can decipher. If there is prophecy in the storm, it is only that pain, once chosen, will not be outrun. In this breathless hush, the first twist arrives, a soft cry from the shadows near the stern, muffled by the crash of waves. You follow Medea's gaze and see her brother, Apsyrtus, younger than legend remembers, but his face is ghostly, smeared with brine and terror. He is not meant to be here, not alive and clinging to the rail. Yet here he is, a remnant of blood, her brother not as memory, but as anchor and threat. Jason does not step in. He is watching Medea as if she is both compass and curse. Their pact is sealed by promise and mutual desperation, and the spellwork that curls around them is never merely woven from trust. Wind screams, tearing the remnants of Colchis from Medea's lungs. But she holds herself like a shadow on the edge of myth. She must choose, keep moving, or confront what she's done and what she must yet do. Her fingertips hover above the stock of her secret vials, each filled with secrets she has never spoken aloud. Another roll of thunder. As the Argo lurches, Apsyrtus's hand slips on the oaken rail. Medea's jaw tightens in silhouette, her voice a low murmur you can barely catch, meant only for the night and any listening gods. Her decision is a soft thing, but it carries the weight of worlds. With a flick of her wrist, she presses a small charm into her brother's palm, a token of protection, or perhaps a final gift. Fate does not pause. The next twist steals in, gentle and jagged ahead. The water gleams red in the lantern light, scattered petals across the current. Apsyrtus, drawn by an unspoken pull, slips away from the living warmth of family into the cold embrace of legend. The Argonauts, roused by the shift of air, gather at the rail, their faces turned from Medea's, unwilling to witness either the mercy or the horror taking root on the waves. You inhabit her gaze. She does not shrink from what follows. Her lips move in silence as the sea turns somewhere between cradle and grave. The dawn that is promised to these fugitives will never reach Colchis, nor restore what has been unmade tonight. For a long while, only the rhythm of oars and the hiss of wind fill the world. Gradually, conversation flickers up, nervous attempts at normalcy as the blood price recedes behind them. Medea's hands tremble for the first time, though she quickly tucks them into her sleeves. Jason waits nearby but says nothing. He, too, is newly haunted. You sense the motif deepen. The firelight's flicker dances on faces drawn tight with exhaustion. Somewhere far off, thunder rolls again, but softer now, as if ashamed to disturb the fresh sorrow sleeping on the ship's planks. Even the laments that followed at their backs grow faint, dissolving into the greater ocean that swallows all things in time. Before the moon sets, Medea stands alone at the prow once more. The rowers are shadows, the sea itself a slow, heaving hymn. There is no forgiveness in the water, only motion, forward, always forward. She watches as the first paling streaks of dawn bleed into the horizon, promising arrival and reckoning in Jason's homeland. Around you, the air sharpens. The cost of flight has not been measured in coins or golden fleece, but in memory, in blood, and in the haunting certainty that some sacrifices echo forever beneath the rolling thunder and the salt-scarred wind. The mythic age does not sleep. It only slows, breathing out the secrets of loss into the flickering dark, softly, for those brave or broken enough to listen. Night drifts behind the Argonauts, and as the city of Iolcus grows in the distance, etched against the new day by marble walls and the unyielding hearts within, you know Medea's story is only shifting shape, uncoiling into its next fateful act. There is a particular chill that leaks through the marbled corridors of Iolcus. It clings to your bare feet, travels up the pillars, slides over the stone benches where hurried servants once laughed in lighter days. On this morning, the city seems more spectre than salvation, a labyrinth of hallways heavy with the cold gleam of jeweled mosaics, where voices are hushed and no hospitality lingers too long. A distant sea breeze sighs through torn tapestries, its salt tang mixing with the bitter scent of crushed laurel and strange trembling herbs. Medea stands in the small chamber, half lit by the uncertain flicker of fire, her reflection twisting in polished bronze, her shadow growing long and watchful across the uneven tiles. You feel her presence, as if a single silk thread spooled from Colchis still wraps her wrists. Each movement betrays the caution of a stranger in a land that offers no true welcome. Here in the mythic age, even the gods blink slowly, uncertain whether to attend or avert their gaze. Outside the heavy wooden door, Jason's laughter, once dazzling, bright, now seems brittle, as if forced into the sharp corners of this hostile place. Colchis is no home. It is marble and iron and suspicion knotted around Medea's name like thorns around a rose stem. There are rooms in the palace where the air tastes of old copper. Medea often lingers by the window, her gaze drifting across the distant olive groves. But tonight you feel her eyes sharpen as Jason's uncle, Peleus, enters for the first time since their arrival. His footsteps echo, heel, pause, heel. An old predator stalking ground he knows too well. The fire offers him no warmth, only nervous blue light, the flames snatching at his shadow and turning his face ghostly. The year is mythic, far from history's surety. But the world still remembers the golden age, when people trusted so freely. They did not lock their doors, their dreams sheltered by the gods. That peace is long gone. In Colchis, every threshold creaks with distrust. Each glance is a blade, and Jason's triumph is met not with open arms, but with clipped tones and the tightening of wary smiles. Peleus studies Medea for just a moment too long, his face a mask somewhere between derision and fear. He turns to Jason and speaks of debts unsettled, of uncertainties, offers disguised as insults. Medea, blade sharp, feels the insult coil inside her ribcage. You sense her resolve. Beneath the silks of a foreigner, she wears cunning like unseen armor. Her peripheral vision folds the tapestry of the chamber into memory. Every escape route mapped, the sound of distant thunder threading through her thoughts, the old world gods warning its children. A silent pact is struck in this room, though no words name it yet. Medea knows the shape of a threat. She knows, always, how to answer. That night, in the hush and hush of the velvet dark, Medea moves. You walk with her in memory, drifting as a waft of smoke through corridors thick with secrets, the only witness to trembling lamplight and the low, rhythmic chanting of old Colchian spells. Her hands, steady from years of mixing roots and poisons, pluck a sprig of yew from her pouch, crush the stem, and let its bitter green scent drift up. She listens for footfalls behind the velvet curtains. The tang of iron in her mouth matches the taste of risk she knows can never be sweet. Jason watches, trembling, as Medea prepares what must be done. In the stories the bards will tell, he is the hero who reclaims a throne. Only here, in the silence and haze of burnt herbs, do you see the truth. It is Medea who opens the gate for revenge. As the hour slides toward midnight, she meets Jason's fearful eyes, and the words she chants are sharp, coiling around the heart of power that only a sorceress of Colchis can wield. The fire flickers uncertainly at every invocation, mirroring the way courage flickers behind Jason's mask. In the chamber just beyond, Peleus lies awake. The window rattles with a sudden wind. The gods are silent, holding their breath, remembering a time when the world began as formless chaos, every destiny spinning wild and grim. On this wind-swept night, Medea's spell winds tighter, the echo of distant thunder rolling through the stone bones of the palace. Her revenge, sharpened by exile and fate's cruel caprice, arrives in the form of a whispered promise, a way to restore Jason by stripping life from his uncle. But vengeance in the mythic age exacts a price. When sunrise smears gold and blood across the city, and news of Pelias's downfall hisses through the corridors like a snake, Medea does not celebrate. Her hands are steady, but the taste in her mouth is ash. The first blood claimed in Iolcus is a hollow victory, a debt that can never be repaid with golden crowns or coronation feasts. The shadows in her chamber stretch wider, thicken at the edges, and you feel them gathering, as if storing the weight of every secret Medea now harbors. Elsewhere, the household is not slow to learn her name. She is not just a foreigner, nor merely a queen in waiting. The children keep their distance. The men untie their sandals at the door, muttering in nervous syllables. Only the old women, those who remember the time before locks and keys, watch her with something like awe along with fear. You might wonder, in this flickering half-light, was it vengeance Medea hungered for, or simply a place that would stop refusing her? Does power, once tasted, ever slake the thirst of exile? The answer remains elusive, whispering at the edge of the senses like distant waves tugging at the hulls of forgotten ships. In Iolcus, Medea's legend sharpens. The story turns. Her victory, tinged with grey sorrow, is greeted not by relief, but by a new, wary silence. Lamplight glows faint on the chamber walls. The tang of iron lingers. Outside, somewhere beyond closed doors, a soft lament rises, song or warning, no one can say. As you watch through Medea's haunted gaze, you sense that sanctuary in Iolcus is as brittle as spun glass, and the night's work will echo for years. Behind veils of feasting and coronation, trust unspools. Yield for a moment to the hush within Iolcus. Shadows slip across the flagstones, their edges golden where firelight trembles on the banquet hall's mosaic floors. A room swollen with the scent of wine, honeyed meats, and bruised laurel. The thunder outside is muffled beneath laughter and the roll of harp strings. But every so often, a hush steals through the crowd like the chill of a ghost's breath. You stand at Medea's shoulder. Her profile is half-lit, gaze distant, lips composed, fingers twined around the stem of a silver cup. Even as toasts rise and fall, trust unravels at the seams. Here, amid painted columns and rich tapestries, the cost of each secret, each favor, grows sharper. There are murmurs of gratitude for the sorcerer's queen, her foreign cunning, her cool-eyed courage that brought the ram's fleece to Iolcus at Jason's side. Yet the same whispers turn sideways, sharpening in the hall's long echoes. Some watch Medea's movements, flinching at her touch or her passing shadow, and barter tales of her magics for a seat closer to the throne. Medea's gifts unravel with every breath. Where once her love for Jason burned fierce and honey-bright, now it flickers, its light dimmed by doubts neither will name aloud. The sea wind that climbs the outer galleries carries a strange tang, iron and salt, drifting past fresh garlands mingled with burnt herbs. Night deepens, the palace alive with both celebration and unease. She stands quietly beside Jason through the endless feasts and coronation rites. Medea's smile remains gentle, her voice a soft current steering every conversation. Allies gather, hopeful and anxious, and Medea reads each voice as a fisherman studies the surface of dark, knowing waters. No gesture escapes her. Every half-glance, every shudder of hesitation is gathered into her weaving heart. You sense it in the way she leans in to murmur quiet pleasantries to Pelias's seneschal, or in the deft nod exchanged with the old Argonaut, Acastus. Her influence is a golden thread, only visible when the light is right, only felt when it tightens. Yet suspicion runs deeper than any magic. Behind the fragrant brilliance of garlands, behind goblets raised in gratitude, Iolcus begins to freeze. Servants draw away from darkened doorways. Guests who once laughed together now avoid one another's eyes, as if some silent frost is spreading across the very air. There are tales in the corridors, always half-uttered, rumors that the new queen's enchantments may linger over the vineyards, turn soldiers' minds to dust, animate stone and bone with a word. Medea listens, composed. Her secrets remain veiled, her power always one step removed. You watch Jason, whose jaw is tense with the weight of the future. He sought the fleece for glory, for redemption. Yet he moves now as though the fabric of his victory is threadbare. Medea has handed him a crown, and with it a kingdom teetering on the edge of violence and doubt. For all his lineage, for all the songs that will be sung of the Argo's voyage, he does not know if he has truly won, or merely wandered into another trap of the gods' design. Late, when revelers stagger into the halls and torches bleed their smoke, Medea meets Jason in a room quiet as an oracle's breath. Candle wax pools at their feet. The only light flickers from the hearth. She draws him close, her hand finding the pulse in his wrist, the old thrill of trust still warm beneath her skin. She murmurs of allies who waver, enemies buried deep in their own bitterness, and the traps she must lay. "We are safe," she promises, her words braided with hope and veiled warning. Jason listens, but his silence is raw, a chasm where doubt festers. The sea wind moans against the shutters, bearing the scent of distant thunder and the wild edge of the world. Through sleepless hours, Medea spins stories, each more delicate, more dangerous than the last. She visits those who hover on the edge of loyalty, sows doubts, plants quiet ambitions. No gesture is wasted. Invitations are sent to those who might linger between power and exile. You sense her plotting beneath each gentle phrase, sense the cold resolve lingering in the curve of her neck. Even her steps seem measured, as if tracing invisible patterns on the marble, patterns that will shape the fate of kings and the memory of blood. The tang of iron sharpens in the palace air, as if the very stones remember the old betrayals. Once, just before dawn, a storm rose through, thunder crawling slow and insistent over the hills. Medea walks the empty corridors, alone save for the whisper of her long robes against the floor. Firelight flickers along the walls. Shadows gather in ancient corners. In this silence, she remembers her father's halls in Colchis, the black waters beyond and the scent of wild herbs that marked her childhood. Now those memories drift like ash, old loyalty weighed and bartered for a kingdom that still eyes her as a stranger. It is here, in this spectral quiet, that another layer peels away. Pelias, the usurper king, begins to shrink from every encounter. His allies grow restless, their patience thinning with each new rumor. Under Medea's careful arrangement, gifts are sent, strange boxes sealed with gold wire, tokens promising friendship or hinting at more. Some prove poisoned courts within. Others turn the ambition of her enemies back upon themselves. Every act, no matter how gentle, folds another subtle snare around those who would threaten Jason's throne. But love, once her North Star, is itself uncertain. You see it in the way Jason begins to look past her, eyes fixed on the tapestry of his own wants. Those honeyed moments in the dim ship's hold drift behind them now, a memory already fading, even as the crown grows heavier. At intervals, time seems to slow, settling over the palace like dust in morning light. Now and then, the scent of scorched herbs sharpens, and you are drawn to the careless gesture. Jason's smile, just a sliver too thin, Medea's laughter edged like a blade. Were they ever truly allied? Or does victory always bear its own frost? Night after night, the city presses up against the palace, eager and uncertain. Voices drift through courtyards and colonnades, carrying stories of Medea that blur the line between legend and warning. You wander the marble porticos, catching fragments of odes to the sea gods. Pontus, the early personification of the sea, his power lingering where salt and lightning meet. Above, the sky shimmers as if the very air has thickened. Ether than pure breath, only gods may draw. Within, halls stretch on, their fires guttering. In one breath you catch the soft lament of a serving girl, in another the brittle laughter of a forgotten cousin. The echoes become companions, sorrowful, patient, always returning. Still, Medea's purpose remains sharp. She fans old embers into new alliances, her hands unseen. Yet every victory leaves a mark, each shadow longer than the last. And at the far edge of this stillness, beneath marble beams damp with dawn, you sense the price that must soon be paid. The palace celebrates by day, but the nights are thick with consequences that no feast can banish. The flicker of Medea's power is both promise and omen, her weaving nearly complete yet fragile as breath. You listen long after the music has faded. Outside, the hush of the sea lingers, the taste of iron and burnt laurel unshaken. Every wall in Iolcus now seems to lean inward, straining to hear. What more will unravel before this story is through? Years drain into the marble corridors of Corinth, their splendor soured, and the story spills onward into exile, betrayal, and the gathering storm. Imagine, for a moment, the cold hush of a marble corridor at dusk. You stand beneath its arching shadows, the last thread of light slipping along your skin, and somewhere nearby, the faint song of morning stirs the air. For years now, the city of Corinth, lush, perfumed in the gold of harvest and salt of the far sea, has been your gilded cage, its opulence soured by memory and loss. You are Medea, once the tempest of Colchis, now a stranger even in your own waking hours. Here, firelight trembles along the walls, barely holding back the night. The tang of iron haunts your senses, mingling with the scent of dried herbs, crushed beneath a phantom footstep. Jason's presence, so bright once, has faded into a restless echo. He keeps to rooms across the cold stones, his laughter dulled, his ambitions calcified. Conversations drift through the halls, clipped, formal, careful, like dancers atop thin ice. In the tiny hours, your son's footfalls echo from distant chambers, hesitant and soft, as if they fear to wake an age-old curse sleeping in their mother's chest. Sometimes, above the gentle keening from the servants' quarters, you hear the soft stroke of a lyre, a lament wrapped in ancient tongue, mourning with a patience too great for mortals. It is not a sudden desolation, but a slow corrosion. Night after night, you watch firelight flicker across your palms, flickering patterns painting the same old story on pale skin. Your fingers once summoned storms and bent men to ruin, but now they only shiver, numbed by years that steal what love alone could never earn. At times, you wonder if this is what Gaia felt, buried beneath her own children's failures, her vengeance a slow and grinding ache, not a feverish fire. There is a heaviness here in Corinth, a weight to each breath, as if even the stone halls remember betrayal too well. The city outside stirs with a life that no longer touches you. Young women laugh near the fountains at midday, sunlight scattered on their hair, while merchants haggle in the square. Every so often, a festival's torch-lit parade seeps beneath the palace windows, its shouts and drumbeats echoing dreams you once entertained. You find yourself neither mistress nor mother here, only legend in exile, drifting apart from herself. In quiet moments, you feel the ache for Colchis, its wild garden paths, and the distant thunder over black water. The sea breeze sometimes wanders in, tangling itself through the chamber, stirring the hem of your robe like a forgotten promise. Jason's eyes rarely meet yours, and when they do, a chill hangs between the spaces. You see the silent tally of your deeds reflected there, love won by sorcery, a kingdom seized by cunning, blood spilled in devotion and in desperation. There is no forgiveness in this gaze, only the dull regret of a man outpaced by his own ambition. You trace the places on your wrist where golden bracelets once clung, the metal now replaced by shadows and uncertain memory. Soft laments drift through the palace. At night, it is the quiet weeping that startles you, the kind not meant for mortal ears, winding its way from seamstresses' cots and nursemaids' corners into the hollow of your room. The city remembers your power, but fears it, folding secrets among gossip, wrapping stories of witchcraft around your name like barbed wire. Even the torches set at the palace gate seem to burn with a wary flame when you pass. Days slide into one another, polished by routine, until they shine with a weary ache. You are haunted by what you have sacrificed. In dreams, the Argonaut's laughter echoes across a field of bones, petals, and blood, mingling in a memory that never leaves you. The children of Colchis sleep uneasily in their beds, sighing under invisible burdens. Sometimes, it feels as though tragedy is the only water left. They drink from it, and so do you. In one of those still evenings, a storm rises somewhere far off. Its thunder rolls faint and persistent, like a drumbeat just beyond the horizon. You recognize the omen in it, the low promise that peace, even in its dullest form, is illusion. Over time, even love's fiercest flame is drawn thin, left a gutter in rooms like this. Surrounded by so much unsaid agony, the tension grows quietly, clinging to every sigh, every hush after an argument left unfinished. You know the world beyond these walls, You remember the power that once ran hot and wild in your veins. But here, in this city of marble and caution, power rusts under neglect, becoming something like sorrow, something almost invisible. One midnight, as you light another taper, its glow limping along the veined stone, Jason's voice floats down the corridor, a hushed, hastily concealed conversation. You gather only fragments, names spoken with longing and calculation. Your chest tightens with each syllable. You hear the word gloss, a daughter of Corinth, delicate and untouched by loss. It is not the first time you have heard her name. Now it curdles the very air you breathe. Betrayal crawls quietly, clever and soft-footed. You study Jason from afar, a man in his own golden age, his victories now little more than dust. His dreams had once filled the world with color, fueled by the promise of adventure. But now those dreams turn inward and gray, hunting for new glory where none will be found. You remember another age, spoken in half-remembered whispers, where Cronus reigned and peace blanketed the world. Even then, betrayal had been sown, and power, unguarded, began to rot. The distance between you and Jason widens with each passing day, until even silence becomes barbed. His love, used up and discarded, is a relic. The children draw away as well, hovering on thresholds but never daring to cross into your tangled grief. The palace grows colder, the firelight feebler, flickering desperately as if trying to signal to a world that no longer listens. Beyond the casement, the wind hauls the briny scent of the sea. Pontus, the old personification of ocean, whispering of lands beyond, and the possibility that deep sorrow might drown in wider waters. All the while, Medea waits. She listens, breath held, for the click of sandal on marble, the mutter of secret plans. Every night she asks herself what becomes of power unused, love unreturned. In her hands, the air tingles faintly, promising that, under certain circumstances, everything can still change again. In distant chambers, footsteps retreat. The laments of the palace women grow a little louder, slipping beneath doorways to pool in corners like spilled wine. Thunder grumbles once more, closer now. The promise of storm hangs heavy, promising that this stagnant pain is not the end. Even tragedy, it seems, is never routine for long. One morning is colder than the rest. Cold arrives all at once, as if summoned by more than the turning season. You are there with Medea, standing barefoot on the chilled flagstones of a dim Corinthian chamber. The hour is not yet dawn. A faint, coppery tang clings to the air, iron and bruised herbs, never fully swept away by perfumed servants. Far beyond these shadowed walls, a wind stirs the restless Aegean. When you listen, thunder repeats quietly on a distant horizon. Some mornings open with bird calls. This one opens with secrets. It is not a shout, nor a swift cut. News of Jason's betrayal slips into the room softly, the way a chill will find any gap in the mortar. You hear it at first as a half-whisper, slipping from one attendant's lips to another. Jason, once the hero who sailed here for glory, has bent the knee again, this time to Corinth's throne. He courts Glauce, the king's daughter, as if years and worlds have passed since his vows to Medea. Each new word falls heavier than the last, and the silence settling around Medea soon becomes dense, almost holy. It is a silence bright as rain, washed marble, and sharp as the edge of a knife. The world around her recedes, minutes lengthen, weighted by the knowledge that the man for whom she has crossed continents, betrayed country and kin, now shapes his future without her. You feel Medea breathe steady, but shallower than before. The fire in the hearth flickers, as if wary of burning too brightly in this atmosphere. In that glow, her eyes widen, unblinking, absorbing betrayal. Not rage, at least, not yet. Only the first cold substance of abandonment, forged in a world where gods themselves wound. You might expect a wail, arms raised against the heavens. Instead, Medea stands silent, gaze detaching from the room, as though she can see farther than these palace walls. There is something mythic about her stillness, her refusal to scream. The air vibrates with old medicine. You notice the scent of crushed laurel, a bitter note that never quite vanishes. For a moment, her hands rest on stone, hard as the fate she has chosen, or the one given to her by others. Down the corridor, shrouded behind columns, muted chanting floats in and out, tracing the rituals of an ancient house already moving on. A cold draught stirs the flame, and for an instant it almost gutters out. She does not shiver. The silence is not only grief, it is calculation, an alchemy of pain being transformed within her. You are invited to witness that privation, the moment a heart decides whether to break or to begin forging weapons from its own sorrow. Outside, the sea claws at the rocks below, always seeking, restless as memory. Medea is alone, yet not defeated. The knowledge of Jason's ambitions burrows into her, finds old wellsprings of magic and love, and begins to awaken something slower, burning than vengeance, resolve. The cut is deep, but the wound is not fresh. You sense, in her quiet, the accumulation of a lifetime's injuries. Father, brother, clan, now husband. In old Colchis, she vowed everything for Jason. In Corinth, he forgets her name while the fire dies to embers. Lightning splits the sky, somewhere far away, its echo pressed flat by the thick dawn air. Time feels suspended. The stone beneath her feet remembers an age before men built palaces. Perhaps before the world itself was carved from chaos, when silence was the first language, and pain was simply the edge of existing. Amid that hush, Medea's eyes never leave the orange pulse of the coals. Grief moves through her as tides do, slow and inevitable. She does not call for Jason. She does not plead with the king. Instead, she folds herself into her own gaze and lets the outside world blur. For a long stretch, the only motion comes from her breath and the quiver of the firelight. The perfume of rosemary and myrrh is edged with smoke, and beneath it all that metallic smell, the memory of wounds, both literal and otherwise. You almost miss the first wetness splashing on stone. Only then, in this hush more total than death, does she cry, each tear snatched away by the whispering wind from the sea. Her grief fills the room and is absorbed by it. The chamber grows heavier, as if even the walls must grieve for such a love unmade. Yet there is shape even in devastation. Medea straightens her back. A reflection flickers briefly in a polished urn. Her face changed, no longer trusting, no longer the infatuated exile who followed Jason into a foreign land. The tension within the chamber thickens, almost as if myth itself coils tighter, preparing. You realize you are witnessing not the end of a story, but the beginning of another verse. A tragic heroine, forged not in the hysteria of sudden wrath, but in the impassive, meticulous cold of betrayal's aftermath. There is a different thunder now, a tremor deep within the palace, reverberating underfoot, barely perceptible. Perhaps it is the shifting of the household staff, already adapting to Colchis' impending arrival. Or perhaps it is the ancient memory of the Golden Age, when harmony and rupture lived side by side in the stories whispered from throne to cradle. What does she see, you wonder, staring silently into the braided shadows on the wall? Does she replay Jason's promises, the feel of Colchis' earth beneath her feet, her brother's voice now lost to the ages? Or does she already sense the next act turning beneath the current of her pain? These are questions woven into every stone of ancient Greece and every heart that has ever been cast aside. You are reminded, just then, of the stories that run through this world like invisible currents, the prophecies spoken in half-light, the curses laid down by gods and men. Medea's silence is both shield and blade, and the tragedy gathering now is quiet, lingering, relentless. In the cold air you hear, almost believe you hear, a single, delicate lament threading through every corridor, merging with the wind that rises from the sea. The flickering fire throws shadows against the walls, long and flickering. Behind her composure lies a different storm. Thunder rolls again, softer this time, as if the heavens themselves have grown weary of bearing witness to so much sorrow. The taste of iron, strong and steady, returns to the back of your throat. The fire, the herbs, the far-off sea, every sense smoulders with the knowledge that nothing will be returned to what it was. There is no breaking of glass, no sudden shriek. Instead, a hush as ornate and final as a tomb. Medea stands, not above her suffering, but inside it. Her very presence sanctifies the void. The world outside slides on. Jason whispers sweet things to a new bride, to be, and palace life resumes its rhythm. Yet here, in this single, unyielding moment, the tragic heroine finds her edge. Soon, her sorrow will become something else entirely. But for now, amid the holy stillness, you stand with her on the edge of what love leaves behind, and what mythic hearts endure while waiting to decide who they will become next. The night is knife-thin. The night draws itself razor-thin across the city of Corinth, leaving the world in a hush sharpened by the distant promise of thunder. You stand in the dim privacy of Medea's chamber, where the only light flickers over her bent figure, hunched in patient concentration. Out beyond the shuttered windows, the air carries a briny tang from the sea, a faint trace of Colchis, pressed between memory and longing. Here, incense and strange herbs smoulder, layering the darkness with a scent that is sharp and medicinal, yet almost sweet. It is the atmosphere of alchemy, a space suspended between hope and dread. Medea's hands, steady and deliberate, move through rituals older than any city standing. She selects ingredients from weathered jars, dried petals that stain her fingertips red, a vial of oil so dark it seems to swallow the candlelight. Something in the air vibrates, an omen perhaps, a warning almost beneath hearing. Every motion she makes is measured, purposeful, a woman who understands the full weight of her intentions and how little she can undo. A silken gown is laid glowing atop her work table. It shimmers with an opulence that belies its true nature. Medea soaks it in the potion she has brewed, her expression unchanging, eyes following the cloth as it drinks down the shimmering liquid. Threads meant for celebration now steep in a quiet, deadly purpose. The flicker of flames reflects off crystal bottles, and the curve of her cheek, lighting her face with a haunted patience. Outside, another hush settles, the thick silence before a storm breaks. You listen to the distant sounds echoing through stone corridors, soft chants, a musician's dirge winding its way from a far-off hall, the slow passage of feet. The bridal chamber stands ready, garlands fresh and perfumed. Somewhere, the young princess breathes in dreams of golden futures, even as a different fate inches closer, wrapped in iridescent silk. Medea works alone, her resolve uncompromised by tears or rage. This is not a fevered vengeance, but a necessity honed by betrayal, as brittle and sharp as the cold marble floor beneath her feet. Jason's broken vows circle the room, a silent spectre always at her shoulder. You sense her mind weighing each consequence, each wound she can neither forgive nor escape. Her legacy, once rooted in fierce devotion, now unfurls towards something irrevocable. A sudden draught gusts through the chamber, catching the flame and casting the walls in shuddering movement. Instantly, the fire stirs the bitter scent of iron and burnt petals into your awareness. It is a reminder. The edge between healing and harming has blurred. Medea pauses, letting her palm hover over the steaming cloth, as though listening for a confirmation from the shadows beyond the lamplight. Outside, thunder rolls closer. In this pause, a realization lingers in the air. Vengeance requires precision, but it also asks for surrender, and neither comes without a price. She wraps the bridal gift carefully, her motions ritualistic. Each fold in the precious fabric is smoothed, as if coaxing memory itself to lie flat. When the bundle is ready, Medea's gaze slides to the door, where the first grey hints of pre-dawn dampen the blackness of the night. She will give this creation not as a jealous lover, but as a reckoner, offering beauty that promises to destroy. A distant cry intrudes, euphoria in the festival outside, suspicion in the echo. The wedding, the laughter, the biting perfume of sweet wine, all seem washed in pale firelight. Here in this chamber, time moves differently, elongated by the weight of decision. For a brief moment, as Medea steadies the gift in her hands, you're asked to consider, is this the act of a villain or the last gesture of someone already adrift? Then, calm but irrevocable, she steps into the corridor. Soft laments drift from shadowed alcoves, too faint to decipher. Every step she takes recalls another moment lost. Colchis, with its hills wreathed in mist. The Argonaut's wooden vessel creaking above the black water. The whispered threats that smuggled her into foreign lands. Each step tightens the knot of story, binding fate to the palpable tension in the air. At the threshold of the bridal chamber, Medea finds the young princess waiting, clothed in anticipation and innocence. The cloth, silk spun with death, passes from one hand to another, the gesture so gentle it might have been a benediction. Medea's voice is soft, the words indistinct amid the distant tumult of celebration. The princess smiles, oblivious to poison dreaming beneath the seams. Medea's gaze lingers not on her rival, but past her, to the places love once flourished and was then consumed. Calm falls as Medea withdraws. The corridor behind her swallows footfalls in its deep silence. In the wake of her passing, a subtle transformation begins. Firelight playing on the gift ignites a chain of devastation. What had been dazzling now burns itself into fate. Smoke and scent, bright and acrid, spread through the halls. Somewhere beyond these walls, laughter turns to shouts, a wedding into a funeral. Yet, for a moment longer, we inhabit the hush, the single breath before tragedy shapes everything that follows. Medea finds herself suspended at the edge of what she has wrought, listening to the crackle of distant flames. Perhaps she presses her hands to trembling lips, transfixed not by what the world will say, but by what her own heart cannot answer. The price of myth is measured not only by suffering inflicted, but by all that must be abandoned. You can almost hear the ancient stones themselves mourning, echoing with soft, startled lament. Even the sea breeze mourning from Colchis seems to recoil. In the bridal chamber, the potion's brilliance devours its victim in merciless beauty, a sight seen by none, felt by all who remain. At last, as dawn makes its first uncertain claim on the city, the cost becomes something too great to carry. You are left holding Medea's haunted gaze in the emptied corridor, where every shadow hints that some losses can never be reclaimed. There is no celebration now, only the silent, smoking aftermath of a choice that twisted love into legend. Soon, the ash of vengeance will drift through ruined chambers, settling on what endures. Ash drifts through the ruined chambers of Corinth. In the hush that follows disaster, you stand somewhere outside time, cold marble beneath your feet, and the slow, metallic scent of blood and burnt herbs curling in the stillness. Somewhere, thunder rolls, not with fury, but as a lingering question, low and unresolved, ringing through empty halls. The memory of fire flickers along the walls, restless, uneasy, as if still searching for the one who set it in motion. Medea is gone. Yet what she has woven remains, a tapestry of pain and longing stretched across the bones of this ancient city. You can imagine her shadow moving through the glowing haze, slippered feet silent on shattered tile. No one dares follow. In the distance, a keening rises, the soft lament of women who will carry this story in their breath long after the marble cools. Sometimes the stories that haunt a city are not seen. They are felt as an ache beneath the skin, as the taste of iron in the air. It is easy now to forget that Medea was ever a girl by the sea in Colchis, the kingdom at the world's edge, where the night pressed in with secrets and the ancient gods moved as shadows between the trees. Thunder had been her companion there as well, crackling above the Black Sea, the same sea that brought Jason to her father's shore and set the path for everything to come. Betrayal, vengeance, the slow turning of love into ash, All these things have left their marks not only on Medea, but on the city that welcomed her, and then recoiled, as if in fear of the very passion they once celebrated. In this final quiet, when even the flames have died and the last cries are fading, you sense her greatest cruelty might be her absence. With every chamber she leaves behind, she takes meaning with her. The halls, where her children's laughter once echoed, are mute now, the very air shaped by the wounds of myth. At the heart of it all, you find yourself inhabiting the gaze Medea left behind, haunted, unblinking, always turned toward the line where the sea meets the storm. People will ask how Jason endures what she has done. They imagine his grief as something towering, a monument to lost innocence and the price of ambition. But true grief is not loud. It seeps between ribs at night. It makes the wind colder. It hollows the roads of Corinth so even footsteps vanish into silence. Jason, in truth, fades too. His once gilded strength is worn down to memory, and while the city nurses its wounds, he drags his legend behind him like a ruined cloak. The sea's constant hush forms a kind of answer. Medea is elsewhere, not vanished entirely, just slipped out of view, behind the veils of time and rumor, riding a chariot drawn by dragons or simply walking barefoot along a road no one else dares travel. Greece will reshape her story 100 times, sometimes as villain, sometimes as healer, sometimes as shadow. In every telling, her eyes are the last to leave. Outside these shattered walls, the wind picks up, a restless shroud tugging at the ashes, promising that nothing is ever entirely gone. The herbs Medea once used for her spells cling to the stones, their fragrance mingling with the iron tang of memory. It is said that the tragic heroines of myth never truly rest, and the proof is all around you, in every shade that lingers where firelight once played across marble. Draw closer, and you can feel the world shifting on its old foundations, as if the gods themselves pause to take measure of what has happened. In Greek myth, chaos was never mere confusion. It was the space before everything, a yawning void from which all stories arise. Medea's absence feels like that, a new emptiness, dangerous and brimming with unfinished possibility. Her legend, refracted through layers of sorrow and smoke, will haunt the weather in distant halls long after Corinth is rebuilt. Do you sense the hush, the gentle, eerie stillness after a great act has run its course? In that hush, Medea is more present than before, no longer flesh, but a tension in the air, a song half remembered, a warning hidden in the thunder. The fire is out. The stones remain marked. A story ends, but the ache endures. Watch the horizon, and you may swear you see her silhouette, her long hair swept by impossible winds, her eyes fixed on something just beyond the world's reach. So ends the tale of Medea, daughter of Colchis, lover and betrayer, mother and avenger. Her myth is not a puzzle to be solved, but a wound to be carried, a reminder that the greatest fires leave the deepest shadows. Listen, and you will hear her lament stitched into the rain, her grief woven into the weather itself. In ancient Greece, as in every land that dreams of heroes and pays the price, her story will never be silent.